Welcome back, Coinology. Imagine holding a small copper-colored coin in your hand, something that most people ignore, something that might even be lying forgotten in a jar, in a drawer, or buried at the bottom of a wallet. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But what if that tiny 1-cent coin could be connected to a story worth millions of dollars? What if a coin that many people overlook could actually be part of a collector's dream, a piece of history, and in extremely rare circumstances, something that could be valued in the tens of millions of dollars in the collector market? Today we are diving deep into the mysterious and fascinating world of the 1981 1-cent coin, a coin that seems simple on the surface but carries with it an incredible story of design, history, metal composition, rarity, and the possibility of hidden value. The 1981 Lincoln penny is one of the most interesting coins in the long history of United States 1-cent pieces. At first glance, it looks like every other Lincoln penny people have seen since childhood. But when collectors and historians take a closer look, the story becomes much more complex. The year 1981 came at a very important time in the history of the United States Mint. During this period, the cost of producing pennies was rising quickly because copper prices were increasing worldwide. The U.S. Mint was facing a serious problem. If the price of copper continued to rise, the government would end up spending more money to produce each penny than the penny itself was worth. Because of this economic pressure, the early 1980s became a turning point in penny production. The year 1981 was part of the final period when most pennies were still made primarily of copper. These coins contained about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, which had been the standard composition for decades. This composition gave the coin its famous reddish color and a weight that collectors know very well. The weight of a standard 1981 copper Lincoln penny is approximately 3.11 grams. This weight is extremely important because collectors often use it to determine whether a coin is made from the original copper composition or a different metal mixture. A small difference in weight can sometimes indicate an error coin or a special variation that might be extremely rare. The diameter of the coin is about 19.05 millimeters, and its thickness is approximately 1.52 millimeters. These dimensions have remained consistent for Lincoln pennies for many years. The coin's round shape and smooth edge without reading are part of the classic design that millions of Americans recognize instantly. And now let's talk about the symbol that appears on the coin, often called the mint mark. The mint mark tells collectors where the coin was produced. In 1981, pennies were minted at several locations including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins produced in Philadelphia traditionally had no mint mark during that time, which sometimes confuses new collectors who expect every coin to have a letter. The Denver Mint used the letter D as its symbol, while the San Francisco Mint used the letter S, usually for proof coins made specifically for collectors. Each mint location produced coins with slightly different characteristics, and collectors carefully examine these small details. Even a tiny difference in a letter, spacing, or strike quality can dramatically affect a coin's rarity and value. The design of the 1981 penny is part of one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. The front side of the coin, known as the obverse, features the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. This portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This was a historic moment because it was the first time a real person appeared on a regular circulating U.S. coin. Lincoln's profile faces to the right, and above his head appears the word Liberty. On the right side of the coin is the year 1981, showing when the coin was minted. Above Lincoln's head are the famous words, "In God We Trust," which have been a standard motto on U.S. coins for many decades. If you look closely at the shoulder area of Lincoln's portrait, you may notice tiny initials, VDB. These initials stand for Victor David Brenner, the artist who designed the coin. Interestingly, those initials caused a huge controversy when the coin was first released in 1909 because some people believed the designer's signature was too prominent. As a result, the initials were temporarily removed before being restored in a smaller form later. The reverse side of the 1981 penny features the Lincoln Memorial Building in Washington, D.C. This design was introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The Lincoln Memorial design replaced the earlier Whittier's design that had been used from 1909 to 1958. The Lincoln Memorial image on the coin is incredibly detailed despite the coin's small size. If you look carefully with magnification, you can actually see a tiny representation of the statue of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside the memorial building. This makes the penny one of the few coins in the world that features the same person on both sides of the coin. Above the building are the words United States of America, and just below that is the phrase e pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. At the bottom of the coin is the denomination 1 cent, clearly indicating the coin's value. While millions and millions of these coins were produced in 1981, collectors are always searching for rare variations, minting errors, and special examples that could be worth far more than their face value. Most 1981 pennies found in everyday circulation are worth only a few cents, but certain rare examples can be worth significantly more. One of the most exciting things about coin collecting is the possibility of discovering a rare error coin. Errors can occur during the minting process in many different ways. Sometimes the coin may be struck off-center, meaning the design is not perfectly aligned with the blank metal disc. Other times there may be a double strike where the coin was struck twice by the dies, creating a doubled appearance on the letters or numbers. There are also cases where coins are struck on the wrong metal planchet. For example, if a penny were accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different coin, it could instantly become a rare collector's item. These types of errors are extremely rare, but when they appear, collectors are willing to pay huge amounts of money to obtain them. In the case of the 1981 penny, collectors pay close attention to mint marks and die varieties. Small differences in the shape of letters or numbers can create what is known as a variety coin. These varieties can sometimes be extremely valuable if only a small number were produced before the mint corrected the mistake. Now imagine the excitement of discovering a coin that looks slightly different from the others. Maybe the numbers appear doubled, or maybe the coin weighs slightly more or less than expected. These tiny details could mean the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. In rare collector markets, certain coins have sold for astonishing prices. The idea that a single penny could be worth millions of dollars might sound unbelievable, but history has shown that extremely rare coins can indeed reach extraordinary values when collectors compete to own them. The concept of a coin reaching a value like $43 million would require an extraordinary combination of factors. The coin would likely need to be a unique mint error, possibly the only known example in existence, with historical importance and perfect condition. In the world of numismatics, which is the study and collection of coins, rarity and condition are everything. Collectors use grading systems to determine the condition of a coin. Professional grading organizations examine coins under magnification and assign them a grade that reflects their level of preservation. Coins that remain in perfect or near perfect condition can receive extremely high grades, making them far more valuable than coins that show wear and damage. A coin graded MS-70, for example, represents a perfect mint state coin with no visible flaws. While it is extremely rare for older coins to receive such a grade, coins that come close can still command very high prices. When people first begin learning about coin collecting, they often overlook the importance of small details. A coin that looks completely ordinary at first glance may actually contain tiny characteristics that make it incredibly important to collectors. The 1981 1-cent coin is a perfect example of this fascinating reality. Millions upon millions of these coins were struck and released into circulation across the United States, passing through stores, banks, vending machines, and pockets all over the country. For most people, it was simply a penny. But for collectors, every single coin has the potential to tell a deeper story. Imagine a massive building filled with powerful machines striking metal blanks into coins at incredible speed. This is what the United States Mint looks like during coin production. Large sheets of metal are rolled and cut into small round blanks called planchets. These planchets are then cleaned, polished, and fed into coin presses where enormous pressure stamps the designs onto both sides of the coin. Each strike happens in a fraction of a second, yet the force is powerful enough to imprint every tiny detail of Abraham Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial Building. During the year 1981, the United States Mint produced billions of pennies to keep up with the demand for small change in everyday transactions. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were the primary facilities producing circulation coins, while the San Francisco Mint focused mainly on special proof coins designed for collectors. Proof coins are struck using specially polished dies and planchets to create a mirror-like background and extremely sharp details. These coins were not intended for circulation but were sold in collector sets. Because of the enormous number of coins produced each year, even the smallest variation in the minting process can create something unique. This is why coin collectors examine pennies so closely. A slight difference in the spacing of letters, a faint doubling in the numbers, or a small crack in the die used to strike the coin can create a variety that becomes highly desirable in the collector market. The 1981 penny exists in several known varieties depending on the mint where it was produced. There is the 1981 penny with no mint mark from Philadelphia, the 1981 D penny from the Denver Mint, and the 1981 S-proof penny from the San Francisco Mint. Each of these versions has its own characteristics and potential value depending on its condition and rarity. For example, proof coins produced in San Francisco often have extremely sharp details. When collectors examine a proof coin under magnification, they can see a deep mirror reflection in the background of the coin while the portrait of Lincoln appears frosted. This contrast creates a beautiful effect that collectors call cameo or deep cameo. Coins with strong cameo contrast are especially desirable among collectors. Meanwhile, circulation coins from Philadelphia and Denver were made for everyday use, which means they were produced much more quickly and in much larger quantities. As a result, the strike quality can vary from coin to coin. Some coins may have slightly weaker details while others appear exceptionally sharp and well-defined. Condition plays a huge role in determining the value of a coin. Most pennies from 1981 have spent decades moving through circulation, which means they show wear from being handled, dropped, and rubbed against other coins. Over time, the raised details on the coin gradually wear down. Lincoln's hair may appear smoother, the lines of the Lincoln Memorial may become less distinct, and the overall shine of the coin fades. However, occasionally a coin escapes circulation entirely. These coins might have been stored in rolls, saved by collectors, or kept in mint sets. When a coin remains untouched for decades, it can preserve its original mint luster, the bright shine created by the metal flow during the minting process. Coins with strong mint luster and no signs of wear are classified as mint state coins. Professional coin grading companies carefully evaluate these coins and assign them numerical grades based on their condition. The scale usually ranges from 1 to 70, with 70 representing a perfect coin with no visible flaws under magnification. Achieving such a high grade is extremely rare, especially for coins that were originally intended for circulation. For the 1981 penny, most circulated examples are worth only a few cents. But coins in high mint state grades can be worth significantly more, especially if they display strong strike quality and beautiful original color. Copper coins are often classified by their color into categories such as brown, and red. A fully red copper coin that has retained its original bright color is usually far more valuable than a coin that is darkened over time. One of the most exciting aspects of collecting 1981 pennies involves searching for mint errors. Errors can happen at several stages of the minting process. Sometimes the metal planchet may not be perfectly centered when it enters the coin press. When the dies strike the planchet, the design appears partially missing from one side of the coin. This creates what collectors call an off-center strike. Another type of error occurs when the dies themselves develop cracks after repeated use. When a cracked die strikes a coin, the crack can appear as a raised line on the surface of the coin. These lines may look like small lightning bolts or thin branches running across the coin's design. Even more dramatic are double dies. This occurs when the die used to strike the coin receives a slightly misaligned impression during the die creation process. As a result, certain letters or numbers may appear doubled on the final coin. Under magnification, collectors can clearly see the duplicated edges of the design elements. These types of errors are fascinating because they reveal the hidden complexity behind coin production. What appears to be a simple penny is actually the result of an incredibly precise manufacturing process. When something unusual happens during that process, the resulting coin becomes a piece of minting history. Collectors also pay close attention to the metal composition of coins from this period. As mentioned earlier, the 1981 penny was still made primarily from copper. This gives the coin its characteristic weight of approximately 3.11 grams. If a penny from this era were accidentally struck using a different metal composition, the weight would immediately reveal the difference. For example, the modern zinc penny introduced in 1982 weighs about 2.5 grams, which is noticeably lighter than the earlier copper coins. A transitional error, where a coin is struck using the wrong metal during a change in composition, can be incredibly valuable because such mistakes are extremely rare. Over the years, collectors have discovered several famous transitional errors in U.S. coinage. Some of these coins have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction. These discoveries fuel the dream that an overlooked coin could someday turn out to be worth a fortune. The idea of a penny being connected to a value as high as $43 million might sound unbelievable at first. But in the world of rare collectibles, extraordinary prices can occur when an item becomes both unique and historically significant. If a coin were discovered with a previously unknown mint error, combined with perfect preservation and intense collector demand, its value could rise dramatically through competitive auctions. Auction houses play a major role in the rare coin market. When a rare coin appears for sale, collectors from around the world participate in bidding wars. Some collectors view coins not only as historical artifacts but also as long-term investments. Rare coins have sometimes increased in value over time as new collectors enter the market and compete for limited pieces. The excitement surrounding rare coins often spreads quickly within the numismatic community. When news breaks that a new variety or error coin has been discovered, collectors begin examining their own coins to see if they might possess a similar example. This wave of curiosity can lead to new discoveries that were previously overlooked. For the 1981 penny, collectors continue to study the coin closely even decades after it was minted. For many collectors, the true fascination of the 1981 1-cent coin begins when they start looking beyond the surface and realize that every tiny detail on the coin was carefully planned, engineered, and produced through a complex minting process. What seems like a simple everyday object actually represents a mixture of art, history, metallurgy, economics, and national identity. When you begin to understand the story behind the coin, it becomes far more than just a penny. During the early 1980s, the United States Mint was operating at a very high level of production. Billions of coins were needed every year to keep the economy functioning smoothly. Every grocery store transaction, every vending machine purchase, every bus fare, and every cash payment relied on coins circulating constantly through the system. The penny, despite being the smallest denomination, was still one of the most widely produced coins in the country. In 1981, the minting process started with large coils of copper alloy metal. These metal sheets were rolled to a precise thickness before being punched into round discs known as planchets. Each planchet had to meet exact specifications so that every coin produced would have the correct weight and diameter. For the 1981 penny, that meant approximately 3.11 grams of weight and a diameter of about 19.05 millimeters. After the planchets were punched from the metal sheet, they went through a cleaning process designed to remove oil, dust, and metal residue. The planchets were then polished so that the surface would be smooth enough to receive the coin design clearly. Once cleaned, the planchets were fed into high-speed coin presses where the real transformation took place. Inside the press, two steel dies carried the engraved design of the coin. One die held the obverse design with Abraham Lincoln's portrait, while the other die held the reverse design with the Lincoln Memorial Building. When a blank planchet entered the press, the dies slammed together with enormous pressure, stamping the design into both sides of the metal in a fraction of a second. This pressure forced the metal to flow into every tiny groove of the die, creating the raised details that collectors see on the finished coin. The lines of Lincoln's hair, the lettering of Liberty, the numbers of the year 1981, and even the tiny columns of the Lincoln Memorial were all formed during this powerful strike. Even though the minting process was carefully controlled, it was not perfect. The enormous speed of production meant that occasional mistakes could happen. These mistakes are exactly what excite coin collectors because they can turn an ordinary coin into something rare and valuable. For example, sometimes the planchet might not be perfectly centered when it enters the press. If the dies strike the planchet while it is slightly misaligned, the design may appear partially missing from one side of the coin. This type of error is known as an off-center strike. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, the coin can become highly collectible. Another possibility involves the dies themselves. Dies are made from hardened steel, but after striking hundreds of thousands of coins they begin to wear down. Over time, tiny cracks can form in the surface of the die. When this cracked die strikes a coin, the crack appears on the coin as a raised line across the design. Collectors call these die cracks. Sometimes the crack grows larger and forms what is known as a cud, or a portion of the die actually breaks away. When this happens, a blob of raised metal appears on the coin where the missing part of the die failed to strike the planchet properly. These unusual shapes can make a coin extremely interesting to collectors. The 1981 penny is also closely studied for possible doubled die varieties. A doubled die occurs during the creation of the die itself. When the design is being transferred to the die, a slight misalignment can cause the design to be impressed twice in slightly different positions. As a result, the final coin struck by that die show doubling in certain letters or numbers. If a doubled die occurs on a noticeable area like the date or the word Liberty, collectors quickly begin searching for examples. When a genuine doubled die variety becomes known, the coin struck from that die can become very valuable, especially if only a limited number were produced before the mint replaced the die. Another fascinating aspect of the 1981 penny is the color of the copper. Freshly minted copper coins have a bright reddish shine known as mint red. Over time, exposure to air and moisture causes copper to oxidize, slowly turning darker brown. This color change is completely natural, but collectors place much higher value on coins that retain their original red color. Professional grading services often classify copper coins into three color categories: red, red-brown, and brown. A coin that still shows at least 95% of its original red color can be graded as red. These coins are often much more valuable because they look almost the same as they did the day they were minted. And now imagine a 1981 penny that somehow remained perfectly preserved for decades, maintaining its original bright copper color with no scratches, no wear, and no signs of circulation. A coin like that could achieve an extremely high mint state grade if evaluated by professional graders. High-grade coins are always desirable to collectors because they represent the best surviving examples of their kind. The story becomes even more exciting when collectors begin to consider extremely rare possibilities. Throughout the history of coin collecting, there have been cases where unusual mint errors created coins so rare that only one or two examples were ever discovered. These unique coins sometimes become legendary within the numismatic world. In rare situations, collectors and investors compete fiercely to own these one-of-a-kind pieces. Auctions can drive prices higher and higher as wealthy collectors attempt to secure a piece of history that no one else can own. This is how certain coins have reached values of hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The idea that a penny could ever be associated with a value like $43 million sounds almost unbelievable, yet the world of rare collectibles has shown that extraordinary things can happen when rarity, history, and demand combine together. If a coin were discovered that represented a completely unique mint error or historical anomaly, collectors around the world would pay enormous amounts to obtain it. Coin collectors are often described as treasure hunters of history. Instead of searching with shovels and metal detectors, they search through jars of coins, bankrolls, and old collections. The excitement comes from the possibility that an overlooked coin might turn out to be something extraordinary. People sometimes discover rare coins in the most unexpected places. Old piggy banks, inherited collections, estate sales, and even loose change from a store can occasionally produce surprising finds. Many famous coin discoveries have happened when someone simply decided to take a closer look at an ordinary coin. The 1981 penny continues to circulate even today. Despite being more than 4 decades old, many examples still appear in everyday change. Because pennies are produced in such large numbers, they often remain in circulation for many years. This means there is always a possibility that a rare variation or unusual example could still be hiding among common coins. A collector examining pennies carefully might notice something unusual: a slightly doubled letter, an off-center design, or an unusual color. That moment of discovery can lead to research, authentication, and possibly a valuable find. Coin collecting has grown into a worldwide hobby with millions of enthusiasts. Some collectors focus only on pennies, building complete sets of Lincoln cents from every year and mint mark. Others specialize in error coins, searching for unusual pieces that tell a story about the minting process. The Lincoln penny itself is one of the most collected coins in the world. Since its introduction in 1909, generations of collectors have studied its designs, varieties, and historical significance. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln has become one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. In 1981, when this particular penny was produced, the Lincoln Memorial design had already been in use for more than 2 decades. When people look at a penny, they rarely stop to think about the journey that coin has taken from the moment it was created at the mint to the moment it ends up in someone's pocket, wallet, or coin jar. The 1981 1-cent coin is part of that long journey through time, commerce, and history. Every coin minted that year left the United States Mint as a brand new shining copper piece, bright red in color, perfectly struck with the image of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But once those coins entered circulation, their stories truly began. In 1981, billions of pennies were released into the American economy. They moved rapidly through the financial system. Banks received shipments of coins directly from the mint, businesses ordered them to make change for customers, and soon those pennies were traveling through grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, and vending machines. A single penny might pass through hundreds of hands in just a few months. Each time the coin changed hands, it picked up tiny marks and scratches from contact with other coins. When coins are carried together in pockets or cash drawers, they constantly rub against one another. This friction slowly wears down the raised details on the coin. The fine lines of Lincoln's hair begin to soften. The sharp edges of the letters become smoother. The bright copper color slowly fades as the metal reacts with the air. Over years of circulation, many coins develop a darker brown tone. This process is completely natural for copper coins. The change in color is caused by oxidation, which occurs when copper reacts with oxygen and moisture in the environment. While collectors appreciate the historical character of brown coins, they generally place higher value on coins that still retain their original red color. This is why uncirculated coins are so desirable. An uncirculated coin is one that was never used in everyday transactions. Instead of traveling through the economy, it was preserved in a roll, a collection, or a mint set. These coins still show their original mint luster, the bright reflective shine created when the metal flows during the striking process. Mint luster appears as a soft glowing effect when the coin is tilted under light. It moves across the surface in what collectors call a cartwheel pattern. This visual effect is one of the most beautiful features of freshly minted coins, and it is one of the first things professional graders look for when evaluating a coin. When collectors examine a 1981 penny, they also study the strike quality very carefully. The strike refers to how clearly the coin's design was impressed into the metal by the dies. A strong strike means the details are sharp and fully formed, while a weak strike may show less definition in certain areas. For example, the columns of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side can sometimes appear slightly faint if the strike pressure was not perfectly balanced. On a well-struck coin, those columns are crisp and clearly separated. Even tiny details like the steps of the memorial building can be visible under magnification. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Lincoln Memorial design is the tiny statue of Abraham Lincoln that appears inside the building. This detail is incredibly small, yet it can sometimes be seen with a magnifying glass. This makes the penny unique because it essentially shows the same historical figure on both sides of the coin. The obverse side of the coin displays Lincoln's portrait, designed by Victor David Brenner. Brenner's design was first introduced in 1909, marking the centennial anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Before that time, American coins typically featured symbolic figures rather than real people. The Lincoln cent changed that tradition and became one of the most recognizable coins ever produced. Above Lincoln's head on the coin appears the phrase, "In God We Trust," a national motto that has appeared on American coins for many decades. To the left of Lincoln's portrait is the word liberty, symbolizing one of the core values of the nation. To the right is the year 1981, which tells collectors exactly when the coin was minted. If the coin was produced in Denver, a small letter D appears below the year. This mint mark identifies the coin as having been struck at the Denver Mint facility. Coins produced in Philadelphia during that era did not carry a mint mark, which sometimes surprises people who are new to coin collecting. Proof coins from San Francisco carry the letter S and are easily recognized by their mirror-like surfaces and sharp details. These coins were specially made for collectors and were never intended to circulate in everyday transactions. Instead, they were packaged in protective cases and sold as part of official proof sets. Collectors who focus on 1981 pennies often search for the highest possible grades. Professional grading services evaluate coins using a standardized scale from 1 to 70. Coins that show no wear and retain all their original details can receive grades in the mint state range, typically from MS60 up to MS70. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin becomes. For copper pennies, color is also extremely important. A coin graded MS65 red, for example, would be considered a high-quality uncirculated coin with most of its original red color intact. Such coins can command significantly higher prices than ordinary circulated pennies. Another exciting possibility for collectors is the discovery of mint errors. Errors can happen for many reasons during the minting process. Sometimes a planchet may be missing part of its metal, creating what collectors call a clipped planchet. This results in a coin that appears to have a curved piece missing from its edge. Other times, a coin may be struck by misaligned dies, causing the design on one side to appear rotated relative to the other side. This is known as a rotated die error. These types of unusual features make coins especially interesting because they reveal something unexpected about the minting process. Double strikes are another dramatic type of mint error. In this case, the coin is struck more than once by the dies, sometimes at different angles. The result is a coin with overlapping designs that look almost like a shadow image of the original strike. Such coins can be extremely collectible because they clearly show the mistake that occurred during production. In rare cases, coins are struck on the wrong type of metal planchet. This can happen if a blank intended for another coin accidentally enters the press used for pennies. When this occurs, the finished coin may have a completely different color, weight, or size. Transitional errors like this are among the most valuable types of mint mistakes because they are so rare. Collectors who search for these rare coins often use magnifying tools, digital microscopes, and precision scales. A small digital scale can instantly reveal whether a coin has the correct weight. Since the 1981 penny should weigh around 3.11 grams, any significant difference could indicate an unusual composition or mint error. The excitement of coin collecting often comes from the idea that something valuable might be hiding in plain sight. Pennies are one of the few coins that people still receive in large quantities as change. This means collectors have many opportunities to examine them. Some enthusiasts go to banks and obtain entire rolls of pennies specifically for searching. They carefully inspect each coin under bright light, looking for rare dates, unusual mint marks, or signs of doubling. This activity is known as coin roll hunting, and it has become a popular hobby for many collectors. Even though the majority of coins discovered in this way are common, the thrill of the hunt keeps collectors motivated. Every coin has the potential to reveal something unusual. The possibility of finding a rare variety or error coin is what makes the search exciting. The story of coins reaching incredible prices in auctions also fuels this excitement. Over the years, certain rare coins have sold for astonishing amounts of money. These sales captured the attention of collectors and the public alike, showing that small pieces of metal can sometimes become extremely valuable historical artifacts. For a coin to reach an extraordinary valuation such as tens of millions of dollars, it would typically need to possess a unique combination of rarity, historical significance, and collector demand. If a coin were discovered that represented a one-of-a-kind mint error from a significant period in coin history, collectors around the world would likely compete to own it. The story of the 1981 1-cent coin continues to become more fascinating the deeper we explore it, because behind every small coin is an entire world of collectors, historians, and experts who study these pieces with incredible attention to detail. A single penny may appear insignificant to someone spending it at a store, but to a coin collector, that same penny can represent a puzzle filled with clues about how it was made, where it came from, and whether it might be rare. When the United States Mint produced pennies in 1981, the country was already going through a period of economic pressure. Inflation had increased during the late 1970s and early 1980s, and the price of metals such as copper was rising rapidly in global markets. Because the penny was still made mostly of copper at that time, the government was beginning to face a serious problem. The metal inside the coin was getting closer and closer to the actual face value of the coin itself. Think about that situation for a moment. The government was producing billions of pennies every year, yet the raw materials required to make those pennies were becoming more expensive. If the price of copper continued rising, it could eventually cost more than 1 cent just to produce a single penny. That would create a financial loss for the government every time a coin was minted. This economic pressure is one of the reasons why the early 1980s became such an important period in the history of American coinage. The 1981 penny was among the last coins produced before the major composition change that occurred in 1982. After that year, pennies were no longer made primarily of copper. Instead, the United States Mint introduced a new planchet made mostly of zinc with only a thin layer of copper on the outside. Because of this transition, collectors often look at pennies from 1981 with special interest. These coins represent one of the final years of the traditional copper penny that had existed for generations. The weight of approximately 3.11 grams was a standard measurement that collectors had become familiar with over many decades. This weight may sound like a small technical detail, but for coin collectors it is extremely important. When examining a penny, one of the first things a collector might do is place the coin on a precise digital scale. If the coin weighs significantly more or less than expected, it could indicate that something unusual happened during the minting process. For example, if a coin was struck on the wrong metal blank, its weight might be different from the normal standard. Errors like this are extremely rare, but when they occur they can attract enormous attention from collectors. A coin struck on the wrong planchet instantly becomes a historical mistake preserved in metal. These kinds of discoveries are what make coin collecting so exciting. Imagine someone examining a simple penny from 1981 and noticing that it weighs slightly differently than other pennies. That small observation could lead to further investigation, professional authentication, and eventually the discovery of a rare mint error. The world of numismatics, which is the study and collection of coins, is full of stories like this. Many famous rare coins were discovered not by professional historians but by ordinary people who simply decided to look closely at their coins. Sometimes these discoveries happen decades after the coins were originally minted. Another important detail collectors examine is the surface of the coin. Under magnification, the surface of a coin reveals tiny lines and textures created by the metal flowing into the dies during the striking process. These microscopic details can help experts determine whether a coin is genuine or whether it has been altered or damaged. For copper coins like the 1981 penny, collectors are also very interested in the preservation of the original color. As mentioned before, copper changes color over time as it reacts with the environment. A coin that has remained bright red for many decades is considered extremely well preserved. In the coin grading world, a bright red copper penny in near perfect condition can be significantly more valuable than a dark brown penny that has been heavily circulated. Even though both coins might have been minted in the same year, their condition makes a huge difference in value. Professional grading companies play an important role in determining this value. These organizations use trained experts who carefully examine coins under magnification and assign them a grade based on their condition. The grading scale ranges from 1 to 70, with higher numbers representing better preservation. Coins graded above MS65 are considered very high quality. These coins usually show strong mint luster, sharp details, and very few marks or scratches. Because so many pennies circulated heavily, it is actually quite rare to find examples that remain in such excellent condition. When collectors manage to find a coin that appears almost perfect, they often send it to a grading service for official certification. Once the coin is graded and sealed in a protective holder, it becomes easier to sell in auctions or private transactions because buyers trust the professional evaluation. Auctions are one of the most exciting parts of the rare coin market. Major auction houses host events where collectors from around the world compete to purchase rare coins. Some bidders participate in person, while others join online or through phone bidding. During these auctions, prices can climb rapidly as collectors compete for the same item. When two determined collectors both want the same rare coin, the bidding can continue far beyond the original estimate. This competitive environment is what sometimes leads to astonishing record-breaking prices. Over the years, certain rare coins have sold for millions of dollars. These coins are often unique pieces with incredible historical stories behind them. When a coin becomes famous in the collector community, its reputation can add to its value as well. The idea of a penny potentially being connected to a value as high as $43 million might seem unbelievable at first. However, in the world of rare collectibles, extraordinary values can appear when rarity, historical importance, and collector demand all come together. A coin that represents a once-in-a-lifetime discovery could capture the attention of collectors worldwide. Another reason collectors remain fascinated with the 1981 penny is because of the design itself. The Lincoln Memorial reverse design had already been in use since 1959. For more than 2 decades, this image had become a familiar symbol to millions of Americans. The building shown on the reverse is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., a monument dedicated to honoring Abraham Lincoln. The memorial contains a large seated statue of Lincoln inside a grand marble structure supported by tall columns. Even though the image on the penny is very small, the engraver managed to capture remarkable architectural detail. If you look closely at the coin under magnification, you can actually see the tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial building. This subtle detail is one of the reasons collectors appreciate the artistry of the design. It means the coin features Abraham Lincoln both on the front and inside the building. On the back, above the memorial, are the words United States of America and the Latin phrase E pluribus unum, which translates to out of many, one. At the bottom of the coin appears the denomination 1 cent. This design remained on the penny until 2008, making it one of the longest-lasting reverse designs in American coin history. In 2009, the design was temporarily replaced by a series of special reverse images celebrating the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, and later by the Union Shield design used on modern pennies. Because the Lincoln Memorial design lasted so long, collectors often focus on subtle differences that occurred over the decades. Small variations in die production, strike quality, or mint marks can create collectible varieties that specialists search for. For the 1981 penny, collectors continue examining coins carefully in hopes of discovering new varieties that may not yet be widely known. The possibility that an undiscovered variety still exists adds excitement to the hobby. Some collectors even use powerful microscopes to study coins in extreme detail. They analyze the edges of letters, the spacing between design elements, and the texture of the metal. As the story of the 1981 1-cent coin continues, it becomes even more interesting when we begin to understand how collectors, historians, and everyday people slowly turned a simple everyday coin into something that could attract global attention. A penny is the smallest denomination in American currency, and for decades people have often ignored it, dropped it in jars, or even left it behind as loose change. Yet the truth is that many of the world's most surprising discoveries have come from coins that people once believed had almost no value. The 1981 penny belongs to a long tradition of Lincoln cents that began in 1909. By the time 1981 arrived, the Lincoln cent had already been circulating for more than 70 years. Generations of Americans had grown up seeing Abraham Lincoln's face on the smallest coin in their pockets. The design had become so familiar that most people never stopped to think about how long it had survived in American coinage. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the coin represents one of the most important historical figures in the United States. His leadership during the Civil War and his role in preserving the Union made him one of the most respected presidents in American history. The decision to place his image on the penny in 1909 was not only a tribute to his legacy but also a historic moment for U.S. coin design. It marked the first time that a real person appeared on a regularly circulating American coin. The designer of the Lincoln cent, Victor David Brenner, created a portrait that was both simple and powerful. Lincoln's profile faces to the right, showing his strong facial features and distinctive beard. Above his head appear the words, "In God We Trust," which had become a national motto displayed on many American coins. To the left is the word liberty, representing the core value that the nation was founded upon. The year 1981 appears clearly on the right side of the portrait. For collectors, the date is one of the most important parts of the coin because it identifies the specific year of production. Beneath the date may appear a small letter, known as the mint mark, which tells collectors where the coin was produced. Coins without a mint mark were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which historically produced a large portion of the nation's circulating coins. Coins with the letter D were struck at the Denver Mint. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint produced proof coins marked with the letter S, which were specially made for collectors rather than everyday circulation. The reverse side of the 1981 penny displays the Lincoln Memorial, one of the most famous monuments in Washington, D.C. This design was introduced in 1959 and remained on the penny for nearly 50 years. The building features a series of tall columns and a wide staircase leading up to the memorial chamber where a large statue of Lincoln sits inside. Even though the image on the coin is extremely small, the engraving captures an impressive amount of architectural detail. When viewed under magnification, the tiny statue of Lincoln can sometimes be seen inside the memorial. This remarkable detail means the coin features Lincoln twice, once as the portrait on the front and again as the statue within the memorial on the back. Above the building appear the words United States of America along with the Latin phrase E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one. At the bottom of the reverse design appears the denomination 1 cent, clearly indicating the coin's value. Despite this value of only 1 cent, the coin represents a fascinating intersection of art, engineering, and economics. In 1981, the United States Mint was already facing the growing challenge of rising copper prices. Since the penny was made primarily of copper at that time, producing billions of coins each year required enormous quantities of metal. The composition of the 1981 penny consisted of approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition had been used for many decades and gave the penny its classic reddish color and solid feel. The standard weight of about 3.11 grams made it heavier than the zinc pennies that would appear just 1 year later. Because of the rising cost of copper, the government eventually made the decision to change the composition of the penny beginning in 1982. The new coins would be made mostly of zinc with only a thin copper plating on the outside. This dramatically reduced production costs but also changed the weight of the coin to about 2.5 grams. This transition makes the 1981 penny historically significant because it represents one of the final years of the traditional copper cent. For collectors who appreciate the classic composition, these coins hold a special place in the timeline of American currency. Many collectors also enjoy studying the way coins age over time. Copper coins like the 1981 penny undergo a natural transformation as they react with air and moisture. When the coin is first minted, it appears bright red with a shiny surface.
Over years of exposure, the copper slowly darkens into shades of red-brown and eventually deep brown. The preservation of the original red color is extremely important for collectors.
A coin that has retained its bright red appearance after decades is considered very desirable because it suggests that the coin was carefully stored and protected from environmental damage. Collectors categorize copper coins into three color groups: red, red-brown, and brown. A coin graded as red typically retains at least 95% of its original color. These coins often command higher prices in the market because they look almost exactly as they did when they left the mint. Condition is evaluated using a grading system that ranges from 1 to 70. Coins in poor condition with heavy wear might receive grades near the bottom of the scale, while perfectly preserved coins can reach grades near the top. A coin graded MS70 represents a perfect mint state coin with no visible flaws under magnification. While such perfect examples are extremely rare, even coins graded MS65 or MS67 can be considered exceptional. High-grade coins attract serious collectors because they represent the finest surviving examples from a particular year. Another factor that influences value is rarity. Although billions of 1981 pennies were produced, most of them circulated heavily and were eventually worn down or lost. Finding coins that remain in pristine condition decades later becomes increasingly difficult. This scarcity of high-quality examples can make them surprisingly valuable in the collector market. When collectors compete for the best available coins, auction prices can rise quickly. In some cases, a coin that once circulated as ordinary pocket change can later sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on its condition and rarity. The possibility of discovering mint errors also keeps collectors interested in searching through pennies from this era. Errors can occur during many stages of the minting process. Sometimes a planchet may be misaligned, producing an off-center strike where part of the design is missing. Other times the dies themselves develop cracks after striking large numbers of coins. These cracks can appear as raised lines on the coin's surface. While some cracks are small and common, larger die breaks can create unusual patterns that make a coin more collectible. Double strikes, clipped planchets, and wrong metal errors are among the most dramatic types of mint mistakes. These unusual coins reveal moments when the minting process did not operate perfectly. Because such mistakes are rare, collectors are often willing to pay significant amounts to own them. The idea that a simple penny could potentially be connected to enormous values such as tens of millions of dollars comes from the history of rare coin auctions. Over the years, some extremely rare coins have achieved record-breaking prices because they were unique pieces with extraordinary historical importance. If a coin from 1981 were ever discovered with a one-of-a-kind mint error, perfect preservation, and historical significance, it could become one of the most famous coins in the world. Wealthy collectors might compete intensely to acquire it, pushing its value higher and higher through auction bidding. Stories like this are what inspire coin collectors to keep searching. Many enthusiasts examine thousands of coins hoping to find something unusual. They search through bankrolls, inherited collections, and jars of loose change. Sometimes discoveries happen when people least expect them. A coin that sat unnoticed for decades may suddenly attract attention when someone notices a small detail that looks different from other coins. That moment of curiosity can lead to research, authentication, and sometimes an incredible discovery. The deeper we go into the story of the 1981 1-cent coin, the more fascinating the journey becomes because this tiny piece of copper represents much more than just money. It represents time, history, craftsmanship, and the invisible movement of commerce that keeps an entire nation functioning. Every coin minted in 1981 began its life in the powerful machinery of the United States Mint, but once it left those mint facilities, its real journey began in the hands of ordinary people. Think about how many different places a single penny might travel during its lifetime. A coin could begin its journey in a bank in New York, then pass into the hands of a grocery store cashier, later travel with a customer to another state, fall into a child's piggy bank, be forgotten for years, and eventually reappear decades later in someone else's pocket change. This movement through society is what makes coins such powerful historical objects. They quietly witness everyday life without anyone noticing. The 1981 penny was part of a time when coins still played a very important role in daily transactions. Cash registers across the United States rang constantly as customers paid for food, gasoline, clothing, and countless other purchases. Pennies were needed to provide exact change in millions of transactions every single day. Because of this demand, the United States Mint produced enormous quantities of coins each year. Even though billions of pennies were minted, collectors know that not every coin survives in the same condition. Many coins were lost, damaged, or worn down over time. Some fell into sewer drains, others were buried in the ground, and many were simply discarded or melted for scrap during periods when copper prices increased. Because of these losses, the number of well-preserved coins gradually becomes smaller as the years pass. This gradual disappearance of high-quality coins is one of the reasons collectors are so interested in coins like the 1981 penny. While the coin itself may be common, finding an example that remains in beautiful condition decades later can be surprisingly difficult. The combination of age and preservation makes certain coins much more valuable than others. Collectors also study the mint marks very carefully. The mint mark is the small letter located near the date on the coin, and it identifies the mint facility where the coin was produced. In 1981, pennies were primarily minted in Philadelphia and Denver for circulation, while the San Francisco Mint focused on producing proof coins for collectors. A penny with no mint mark came from the Philadelphia Mint. A coin with the letter D was produced in Denver. The proof coins carrying the letter S were struck at the San Francisco Mint using specially polished dies and planchets designed to create extremely sharp details and reflective surfaces. Proof coins are very different from ordinary circulation coins. When you look at a proof coin under light, the background often appears like a mirror while the portrait and lettering appear frosted. This striking contrast between the shiny field and the frosted design creates what collectors call a cameo effect. Coins with strong cameo contrast are highly prized by collectors because they display the design in a dramatic and beautiful way. Proof coins are also struck more than once by the dies to ensure every detail appears crisp and fully formed. Because of this careful production process, proof coins often look far more detailed than coins intended for circulation. Another interesting aspect of the 1981 penny involves the concept of die varieties. A die is the hardened steel tool used to strike the coin's design onto the metal planchet. Over time, each die develops tiny differences due to wear, polishing, or slight adjustments made during production. These differences can create small variations in the appearance of the coin struck by that die. Sometimes the spacing of letters may appear slightly different, or the numbers in the date might have subtle differences in shape. Collectors who specialize in varieties study these details carefully and often use magnification to compare coins. If a particular die variety is discovered that appears only on a limited number of coins, collectors may begin searching for more examples. As awareness of the variety spreads, the coins associated with that die can become more desirable and more valuable in the collector market. One of the most famous types of die varieties involves doubling in the design. A doubled die occurs when the die itself receives a slightly misaligned impression during the creation process. This causes certain parts of the design to appear doubled on the final coins. When doubling appears on prominent areas like the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust," it can often be seen with the naked eye or with a simple magnifying glass. These types of coins quickly become popular among collectors because the doubling is a clear visual feature that makes the coin stand out. The possibility of discovering a rare doubled die or other unusual variety is one of the reasons collectors continue searching through old pennies. Even coins that have circulated for decades can still reveal surprising features when examined closely. Another fascinating detail about the 1981 penny is the metal itself. Because the coin was made primarily of copper, it carries a certain warmth and richness in color that many collectors appreciate. Copper has been used in coinage for thousands of years, and its durability and beauty make it a favorite metal for coins. The reddish tone of a freshly minted copper coin is especially striking. When the coin is tilted under light, the surface often displays a glowing luster that reflects the microscopic flow lines created during the striking process. These flow lines are formed as the metal moves outward from the center of the coin when the dies press down with tremendous force. Over time, however, copper reacts with the environment. Oxygen, humidity, and even oils from human hands can slowly alter the color of the coin. What begins as bright red gradually changes into darker shades of brown. This process is natural and unavoidable for most coins that circulate in everyday use. Collectors who manage to preserve coins in protective holders or sealed environments can slow this process significantly. As a result, coins that retain their original red color decades later become highly sought after. Condition and color together play a major role in determining the value of a coin. Two pennies minted in the same year might have completely different values depending on how well they were preserved. A heavily worn brown coin might be worth only a few cents, while a bright red mint state example could be worth far more. The idea of a penny being associated with values reaching into the millions may sound unbelievable, yet history has shown that certain rare coins can achieve astonishing prices. When collectors discover a coin that is extremely rare or unique, the excitement surrounding that discovery can spread quickly throughout the numismatic community. Major auctions often attract wealthy collectors and investors who are willing to compete for the rarest pieces. Bidding can become intense when a coin represents something that almost no one else owns. In these situations, prices can rise far beyond what most people expect. The concept of a coin reaching a value like $43 million would require an extraordinary situation. The coin would likely need to be a completely unique error or historically significant discovery, preserved in exceptional condition and authenticated by experts. If such a coin captured the attention of collectors worldwide, it could become one of the most famous coins ever known. Stories like this inspire collectors to continue searching through coins carefully. Many enthusiasts believe that rare discoveries are still waiting to be made. After all, billions of pennies were produced over the decades, and many of them remain scattered across the country in jars, drawers, and collections. Sometimes people inherit coins from relatives without realizing what they have. Old coin jars stored in basements or attics may contain coins that have not been examined in years. Within those forgotten collections, rare pieces could still be hiding. The excitement of this possibility keeps the hobby alive. Coin collectors often describe the experience of searching through coins as a treasure hunt. Instead of digging in the ground for treasure, they search through small pieces of metal that have quietly traveled through history. As the journey of the 1981 1-cent coin continues, the deeper story begins to reveal how a simple object that most people overlook can become part of a much larger narrative involving collectors, historians, investors, and everyday people who share a curiosity about hidden value. Coins are among the few objects that travel continuously through society, passing from person to person without anyone truly knowing where they have been before. A penny minted in 1981 could have traveled across cities, states, and even countries during the decades since it was created. When the United States Mint produced the pennies of 1981, the minting facilities were operating at incredible speed. Powerful presses struck thousands of coins every hour, each strike forcing the design of Abraham Lincoln and the Lincoln Memorial into the copper surface of the coin blank. The pressure used during this process was immense, ensuring that every detail of the engraving appeared clearly on the finished coin. The copper alloy used in 1981 pennies contained about 95% copper along with a small amount of zinc and tin. This metal mixture had been used for many decades because it was durable and easy to strike with detailed designs. The result was the familiar reddish coin that millions of people recognize instantly. At the time those coins were minted, no one imagined that collectors decades later would still be carefully examining them under magnification. Yet today the 1981 penny is studied by numismatists who search for rare varieties, unusual errors, and coins preserved in remarkable condition. The coin's weight of approximately 3.11 grams is one of the first things collectors verify. Even a tiny difference in weight can reveal that something unusual may have occurred during the minting process. A coin that weighs less or more than expected might have been struck on a different type of metal blank or might have been affected by a production mistake. Collectors often use digital scales capable of measuring weight with extreme accuracy. By comparing the weight of a coin to the official mint specification, they can determine whether the coin matches the expected composition. If the weight differs significantly, it can lead to further investigation. Another important aspect of examining a coin is studying the edges and the rim. The rim is the raised border that surrounds the coin. This border is formed during the striking process when the metal is forced outward into a retaining collar. The collar ensures that every coin has the correct diameter and shape. If the collar malfunctions or the planchet is not positioned correctly, the coin may display unusual characteristics such as a broad strike or a partially missing rim. These unusual features are fascinating to collectors because they reveal moments when the minting process did not proceed exactly as intended. The 1981 penny can also be studied for signs of die wear. A die is the hardened steel tool that contains the engraved design used to strike the coin. Because dies strike thousands or even hundreds of thousands of coins, they gradually wear down over time. As this wear develops, the details on the coin struck by the die may begin to appear slightly softer or less defined. Sometimes the mint attempts to extend the life of a die by polishing it. This polishing process can leave faint lines on the surface of the die, which may then appear as tiny lines on the coins produced afterward. Collectors who examine coins under magnification can sometimes identify these polishing lines and determine which die was used to strike the coin. Even small imperfections in the die can become important identifying features. A tiny raised dot, a faint crack, or a slight shift in a letter can help experts track coins back to a particular die used during production. This type of study is known as dye analysis and is one of the more advanced areas of numismatics. The Lincoln Memorial design on the reverse of the 1981 penny also offers many details for collectors to study. The building itself features tall columns arranged in a row, representing the architectural style of the real memorial in Washington, D.C. The engraving on the coin captures these columns in miniature form, creating a surprisingly detailed image despite the small size of the coin. If viewed with strong magnification, the steps leading up to the memorial and the small interior chamber can sometimes be seen clearly. Inside the building sits the statue of Abraham Lincoln, which appears as a tiny shape at the center of the memorial. This detail makes the coin unique because it includes Lincoln's image both on the front and within the memorial on the back. The artistry involved in creating such a small but detailed design demonstrates the skill of the engravers who worked at the United States Mint. Translating a large monument into a tiny coin required careful engraving techniques and precise die production. While the design itself remained consistent throughout the Lincoln Memorial series, the condition of each individual coin can vary dramatically depending on how it was treated after leaving the mint. Coins that circulated heavily often developed scratches, dents, and worn surfaces. Coins that were stored carefully, however, may still appear almost new decades later. Collectors place significant importance on the preservation of mint luster. Mint luster is the bright, reflective sheen created by the microscopic flow of metal during the striking process. When a coin is tilted under light, this luster often moves across the surface in a rotating pattern known as a cartwheel effect. The presence of strong mint luster usually indicates that the coin has experienced little or no circulation. Because most coins eventually lose their luster through handling and wear, examples that retain this feature are especially desirable to collectors. The grading of coins provides a standardized way to measure their condition. Professional grading companies use a numerical scale ranging from 1 to 70. Coins at the lower end of the scale show heavy wear and damage, while coins near the top are nearly perfect. A mint state coin with a grade above 65 is generally considered very high quality. If such a coin also retains its original red copper color, it becomes even more attractive to collectors. High-grade red copper coins from earlier decades are often difficult to find because most have darkened over time. Another factor that influences value is collector demand. Even if a coin is relatively common, strong interest from collectors can increase its price in the market. Lincoln cents have been collected for generations, and many collectors attempt to build complete sets that include every year and mint mark. Because of this widespread interest, certain years become especially competitive among collectors seeking the finest available examples. Auctions often showcase high-grade coins that attract bidders from around the world. When two collectors both want the same rare coin, the bidding can rise quickly. Auction houses sometimes witness dramatic moments when collectors continue raising their bids far beyond the initial estimate. These competitive situations are what occasionally lead to record-breaking prices in the rare coin market. The possibility that a coin could reach values in the millions often begins with a unique discovery. A previously unknown mint error or an extremely rare variety can suddenly capture the attention of the entire numismatic community. When a coin is both rare and historically significant, collectors may be willing to pay extraordinary amounts to acquire it. The idea of a penny being associated with a value like $43 million represents the extreme upper limit of what could happen if a coin possessed extraordinary rarity and global collector demand. While such situations are incredibly rare, the history of coin collecting shows that remarkable discoveries can occur. Stories of hidden treasures found in ordinary places continue to inspire collectors. Some rare coins have been discovered in inherited collections, old jars of change, or even among coins returned from a bankroll. These discoveries remind collectors that valuable pieces may still exist unnoticed. Because billions of pennies have circulated for decades, many of them remain scattered throughout the world. Some are tucked away in drawers or coin jars, while others remain in circulation, passing quietly from hand to hand. As the exploration of the 1981 1-cent coin continues, the story becomes even more intriguing because the small copper coin is not just a piece of currency, but also a witness to decades of economic change, technological progress, and everyday life. A coin minted in 1981 has now existed for more than 4 decades. During that time, it may have traveled through thousands of hands, crossed long distances, and experienced countless transactions without anyone paying much attention to it. When the United States Mint produced the pennies of 1981, the world was very different from today. Cash payments were still the dominant method for everyday purchases. People relied heavily on coins for small transactions such as buying snacks, paying bus fares, or making exact change at grocery stores. Because of this constant demand, the minting facilities had to produce coins in enormous quantities inside the mint. The process of producing each coin followed a carefully controlled system. Large sheets of copper alloy metal were rolled to the precise thickness required for pennies. These sheets were then punched into round blanks called planchets. Each planchet was inspected and cleaned before being sent to the coin press for striking. The coin press itself was an impressive machine capable of striking coins with incredible speed and force. When the dies came together, they stamped the design into the metal with such pressure that the metal flowed into every tiny groove of the engraving. This process created the raised portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the detailed image of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The finished coin emerged from the press with a bright copper color and a fresh mint luster. At that moment it was a brand new coin, perfect in detail and untouched by circulation. But once the coins were packaged and shipped to banks, they quickly began their journey through the economy. The moment a coin enters circulation, it begins to change. The surface gradually collects tiny scratches as the coin rubs against other coins in pockets and cash drawers. The raised details slowly wear down as the coin moves through thousands of transactions. Over time, the bright copper color begins to darken as the metal reacts with oxygen in the air. This natural aging process is one of the reasons collectors place such a high value on coins that remain in excellent condition. Finding a 1981 penny that still looks almost new after decades is far less common than finding one that shows heavy work. Collectors often use magnifying tools to examine the coin's surface closely. Under magnification, they can observe tiny features such as dye lines, small marks left by the minting process, and even microscopic scratches caused by circulation. These details help collectors determine whether a coin has been heavily used or carefully preserved. One important feature collectors study is the coin's mint luster. Mint luster is the reflective shine created when metal flows outward during the striking process. When a coin with strong luster is tilted under light, the reflection moves across the surface in a circular pattern known as the cartwheel effect. This effect is a strong indicator that the coin has not been significantly worn. Another aspect that collectors examine carefully is the rim of the coin. The rim forms the raised edge around the coin's design. It protects the inner design from wear and also helps ensure that coins stack evenly. If the rim appears unusually wide, thin, or partially missing, it may indicate a mint error such as a broad strike or an improperly seated planchet. The study of mint errors has become one of the most exciting parts of coin collecting. Errors occur when something unexpected happens during the minting process. Sometimes the planchet may enter the press slightly off-center, producing an off-center strike where part of the design is missing. Other times a coin may be struck more than once by the dies, resulting in a double strike. This creates overlapping images of the design, making the coin appear distorted or layered. Such coins are extremely interesting because they clearly show the moment when the minting process did not work as intended. There are also cases where the dies themselves develop cracks or breaks. When a cracked die strikes a coin, the crack appears on the coin as a raised line. If the crack becomes large enough, it can create a raised blob of metal called a cud. These unusual features can make a coin stand out to collectors. For the 1981 penny, collectors also pay close attention to the mint marks. Coins produced in Philadelphia carry no mint mark, while those from Denver display the letter D. Proof coins struck in San Francisco carry the letter S and were specially made for collectors using polished dies and carefully prepared planchets. Proof coins are often easy to recognize because their surfaces are highly reflective. The background appears mirror-like, while the portrait and lettering appear frosted. This contrast creates the dramatic cameo effect that collectors admire. Because proof coins were made in smaller quantities and handled with greater care, they often survive in excellent condition. Many collectors store proof coins in protective holders to preserve their appearance for decades. The design of the 1981 penny itself continues to attract admiration from collectors. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse side remains one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. Created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, the portrait captures Lincoln's profile in a simple yet powerful form. Above the portrait appears the phrase, "In God We Trust," while the word liberty appears to the left. The date 1981 is located to the right, sometimes accompanied by the mint mark depending on where the coin was produced. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly at the center of the design. The detailed columns and steps of the building reflect the architecture of the real memorial located in Washington, D.C. Even though the image is very small, the engraving captures remarkable detail. Inside the memorial sits the statue of Abraham Lincoln, which can sometimes be seen with magnification. This subtle detail makes the penny unique among many coins because it depicts the same historical figure on both sides of the coin. Above the memorial appear the words United States of America and the Latin phrase E pluribus unum. At the bottom is the denomination 1 cent, clearly identifying the value of the coin. Despite this modest value, the coin carries enormous historical significance. The 1981 penny was minted during the final years of the traditional copper composition used in U.S. pennies for generations. Only 1 year later, in 1982, the composition changed dramatically to a zinc core with a thin copper plating. This change was introduced because the rising price of copper made the old composition too expensive. By switching to zinc, the United States Mint was able to reduce production costs while still maintaining the familiar appearance of the penny. Because the 1981 penny belongs to the final period before this transition, collectors often view it as part of the closing chapter of the classic copper cent era. Coins from this period represent the end of a long tradition in American coinage. The possibility of rare varieties or unique mint errors from this year adds another layer of interest. Even though billions of pennies were produced, only a small number may possess unusual characteristics that make them stand out. If a coin were discovered with an extremely rare error, exceptional preservation, and historical importance, it could attract intense attention from collectors and investors. Competitive bidding at major auctions has sometimes driven the value of rare coins to astonishing levels. The concept of a coin potentially reaching a value such as $43 million represents the extreme end of what could happen when rarity, history, and demand come together. While such valuations are extraordinarily rare, they illustrate how valuable unique coins can become in the world of collectibles. Stories of rare coin discoveries continue to inspire collectors everywhere. Some of the most valuable coins ever found were discovered by ordinary people who simply took the time to examine their coins closely. A penny that looked ordinary at first glance turned out to be something extraordinary once its unique features were recognized. Because pennies remain one of the most common coins in circulation, collectors often search through rolls of pennies obtained from banks. They examine each coin carefully, looking for unusual dates, mint marks, or errors. This activity, known as coin roll hunting, has become a popular hobby for people who enjoy the thrill of discovery. Even though most coins found in this way are common, the possibility of finding something rare keeps collectors searching. As the story of the 1981 1-cent coin finally reaches its final chapter, it becomes clear that what seems like the smallest and most ordinary piece of money can actually hold one of the most fascinating stories in the entire world of coin collecting. A single penny, worth only 1 cent in everyday transactions, carries with it decades of history, craftsmanship, economic change, and the possibility of hidden rarity that continues to capture the imagination of collectors around the world. When the 1981 penny was first struck inside the powerful presses of the United States Mint, it was simply one of billions of coins produced that year. Freshly minted, the coin shined with a bright copper-red color and sharp details that had just been pressed into the metal by carefully engraved dies. At that moment, the coin was perfect, untouched by circulation and ready to begin its journey through the American economy. From the mint, these coins were shipped in large quantities to banks across the country. From there, they quickly spread into the hands of businesses and consumers. Within a short time, the new pennies were moving constantly through grocery stores, gas stations, restaurants, vending machines, and countless other places where small transactions required exact change. For most people, the penny was simply a small part of everyday life. It was dropped into pockets, tossed into jars, and sometimes even ignored because of its low value. Yet with every transaction, each coin was slowly collecting its own story. Every scratch, every mark, and every bit of wear on the coin's surface represented another moment in its journey. Over the years, the bright copper color of many coins slowly darkened as the metal reacted with the air. The raised details of Abraham Lincoln's portrait became softer as the coin moved through thousands of hands. Some pennies were lost in the ground, others ended up in forgotten drawers, and many were saved in jars where they sat untouched for decades. Meanwhile, collectors and numismatists continued to study these coins carefully. To them, every penny held clues about the minting process, the materials used to create the coin, and the historical moment in which it was produced. The 1981 penny became especially interesting because it belonged to the final years of the traditional copper composition that had been used for generations. For many decades, United States pennies were made from a metal mixture containing approximately 95% copper. This gave the coins their familiar reddish appearance and a weight of about 3.11 grams. But by the early 1980s, the rising price of copper was creating a serious problem. Producing billions of copper coins every year was becoming increasingly expensive. Because of these rising costs, The United States Mint eventually made the decision to change the composition of the penny beginning in 1982. The new coins would contain a zinc core with only a thin copper plating on the outside. This change dramatically reduced the cost of production while keeping the coin's appearance mostly the same. The 1981 penny therefore stands as one of the final representatives of the classic copper cent era. Holding one today is like holding the last chapter of a long tradition in American coinage history. Collectors often examine these coins carefully for signs of rarity or unusual features. Even though billions were produced, certain coins may display mint errors or die varieties that make them far more interesting than ordinary examples. A slight doubling in the letters, an off-center strike, or a crack in the die used during minting can transform a simple coin into a collectible piece. The study of these variations is one of the reasons coin collecting remains such an exciting hobby. Every coin offers the possibility of discovery. A collector examining a penny might notice a tiny detail that others have overlooked, and that detail could reveal a rare variety or error. Professional coin grading services also play a major role in the collector market. Experts carefully evaluate coins based on their condition, assigning them a grade on a scale from 1 to 70. Coins that remain in nearly perfect condition can achieve very high grades and often command higher prices. For copper coins like the 1981 penny, the original color is also extremely important. Coins that retain their bright red mint color are considered more desirable than those that have darkened over time. A well-preserved red coin from this era can sometimes be surprisingly valuable to collectors who want the finest examples for their collections. Another fascinating element of coin collecting is the excitement of auctions. Rare coins are often sold through major auction houses where collectors from around the world compete to purchase them. Bidding wars can develop when a coin is especially rare or historically important. In these moments, prices can climb rapidly as collectors attempt to secure a unique piece of history. Some coins have sold for astonishing amounts of money because they were the only known examples of their kind. The idea that a penny could ever reach a value connected to something as extraordinary as $43 million represents the extreme possibility that exists within the world of rare collectibles. While such values would require an incredibly rare and historically unique coin, the concept reminds collectors that even the smallest coin could hold unexpected significance. Throughout the history of numismatics, there have been many surprising discoveries. Rare coins have been found in inherited collections, in forgotten coin jars, and even in everyday pocket change. These discoveries prove that valuable coins can remain hidden for decades before someone finally notices their unique characteristics. Because pennies are produced in such large numbers and remain in circulation for many years, the possibility always exists that rare varieties or unusual examples are still waiting to be discovered. A careful collector examining coins might notice something that others have missed. The thrill of this possibility keeps the hobby alive. People continue searching through rolls of pennies obtained from banks, studying coins under magnification, and sharing their discoveries with other collectors. Each new discovery adds another chapter to the long story of coin collecting. The 1981 penny, though small and often overlooked, represents a remarkable combination of history, art, and economics. It carries the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, one of the most important figures in American history. It reflects the craftsmanship of the engravers and engineers who designed and produced the coin. And it marks the final period before one of the most significant composition changes in U.S. coinage. Every coin that survives today carries a piece of that story. Some may be worn and darkened from years of circulation, while others may remain bright and beautiful after being carefully preserved. Each one has traveled its own path through time, and somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten jar of coins, inside an old collection, or quietly circulating through everyday transactions, a rare 1981 penny could still exist waiting to be discovered. It might be a coin with an unusual mint error, a rare die variety, or a perfectly preserved example that collectors have been searching for. That possibility is what makes coin collecting such an exciting journey. A tiny piece of metal that most people overlook could one day reveal a story worth far more than anyone ever imagined. So the next time a penny passes through your hands, take a moment to look at it carefully. Notice the portrait of Abraham Lincoln, the year stamped into the metal, the small mint mark that tells where it was made. Because hidden within that small coin could be a piece of history, a story from decades past, and perhaps even a treasure waiting to be discovered.